Welcome to the Deeper Into Movies podcast. My name is Stephen T. Hanley. I'm the founder of Deeper Into Movies. We are a pop-up cinema based in London and New York. Today on the podcast, I'm super excited to be joined by Bobby Krlic, aka the Haxan Cloak. Bobby is a composer, producer, musician, soundtrack master. You may know him as the Haxan Cloak and his masterpiece album, I don't know why I said it like that, Excavation. And he's worked with Bjork, Father John Misty, Troye Sivan, and he's got lots of amazing soundtrack credits: Midsommar, Beau is Afraid, Snowpiercer, the Transformers Bumblebee movie, not Bumblebee, this is already a really bad intro, Blue Beetle, for the love of Blue Beetle. And this was a really great conversation. Me and Bobby have very similar backgrounds and childhoods, it seems, in terms of interests and discovering movies. It was really great. It was kind of eerie. We love all the same stuff. And we got into it. David Lynch, working with Ari Aster, industrial noise and experimental music, what it's like working with a composer alongside a director, working with the genius Father John Misty, growing up pre-internet, having to discover movies, God bless Amazon.com and our parents' credit cards. It was a really great talk, and we've been internet friends for a while, and it was great. I was really surprised how quickly we got on and had so much in common. Great conversation. Really great dude. Here is me and Bobby. How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good. Oh, damn, that's a good nowhere poster.
Man, I just kind of got this place like this. I don't live here. This is like a house I rent just for a studio.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, yeah, I've been searching out all these vintage film posters to just kind of make it film world. And that was like a big movie for me.
Yeah, that's my favorite of his, hands down.
Yeah.
That slow dive opening is just spectacular.
Yeah, outrageous. I mean, the first one I saw was Doom Generation when I was a kid. And that really formative experience for me. It opened the door to like a lot of things that I was sort of thinking about but didn't really know like how to, like I couldn't find anybody else that liked those things or thought about those things where I was for a long time. So that was like a big deal for me.
Where did you grow up?
Wakefield in West Yorkshire, so like not far from Leeds.
And how were you discovering stuff? Did you have like a cool older brother, or was there someone?
I did. I had a cool older brother. He's like 8 years older than me. So yeah, he was, into like just everything from, death metal to like good rap music that was coming out then and kind of weird stuff. So like he kind of set me on the journey. But for me, like it was films and film soundtracks that like opened up my world more when I was younger. Like I was obsessed with films from literally being like 8 or 9 years old. Like my Christmas present every year when I was a kid was my mum would get me the Time Out Film Bible. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I never saw those, no. Was that like the Hallowell's film guides, or was it just more created?
It was basically, I mean, it's so boring. Like there's no pictures and it's a giant book, and they release a new one every year, which is just every review of a movie that Time Out has ever written to date.
That's cool.
And it's just in alphabetical order.
So when did you start playing music? I'm surprised you didn't become a filmmaker, considering your other movies.
Well, the funny thing was, it's like I come from a very like musical household. Like my parents were always playing me. Like my mum was a DJ, and my dad played guitar, and they both just loved music. So there's music around
Mm.
just all the time. And my dad gave me a guitar when I was about 6, so I started playing really early. But yeah, at the same time, I just had this real escapist relationship with films, and couldn't get enough of it. And I did, yeah, I mean, I used to write my own scripts and like make little home films with a video camera, and like I went through a period of dreaming about being a filmmaker
Hmm.
to the point where I was probably like, I don't know, 15 or 16, and I like was ask sheepishly asking my dad about like, like New York Film School will run like a
Yeah.
summer program. And he was just like, yeah, there's not, not in a million years could we ever afford that. So unfortunately, no. Uh, and I was in bands, and I was, I had like 4 tracks and 8 tracks, and I was always making my own music as
Mm.
well. So I think at some point it just kind of took over and just became like, oh, I am good. I do think I'm good at this. So I should probably just go and do this. Um, but then, yeah, so I went to uni and I studied in Brighton, and I did like the course was called Music and Visual Art, but it was really like sort of fine art with like a focus on sound.
Mm.
So that's when, I started learning about John Cage and Lamont Young and futurism and all that kind of stuff. And that's when I started making the first like sort of hacks and cloak stuff was at uni. And I still like, but I would always think really visually. Like,
Yeah.
like I would always, it sounds like cliche or whatever, but I would always have like the telly on with the sound off, or like
Yeah.
I would, you know, print stuff out that I liked and pin it around the room. I would always
Yeah.
be looking at stuff while I was writing. So I think like I don't know, like looking back on it, it makes sense to me that I kind of do what I do now,
Yeah,
you
totally.
know.
My buddy Sean Price Williams has an amazing quote where he said, "Every filmmaker I know wants to be in a band, and every guy in a band wants to be a filmmaker."
It's true,
It's
yeah.
really true.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean a lot of directors that I know and work with, like they're all very musical and
Yeah, I don't know
or
anyone who's not obsessed with both. Really, I think
yeah,
all the real ones have huge DVD
yeah,
collections, record collections, and a massive book collection, and tons of shit around their house.
yeah. I do want to make a film one
Hmm.
day, and I will. Um, it is it's not gone away, you know.
Yeah, it's true. Well, I get that all the time when people come up to me at the screenings and like, "Do you make movies?" And I'm like, oh, "I used to at film school and stuff," and then I just kind of, I don't know, life happened and I kind of dropped off,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
kind of Well, then I used to do films for my friends are in like a kind of post rock shoegaze band, so I'd always do films of their live performances and stuff,
yeah.
which was, but now I kind of feel the curation has taken over.
Well, but it's also just like, I mean, I don't know. I kind of look at the whole thing as just like R&D or something,
Yeah,
like I don't know, all this stuff, you kind of accrue all this information, and at some point, if it's meant to come out, it'll present itself in some way.
yeah.
I think.
So how did we end up on power electronics and white noise of it all?
I think, I mean, I'd always gravitated towards the darker end of like anything,
Yeah.
like from being very young. Um, that stuff really came to the forefront like when I went to Brighton, when I went to uni. It is, I mean, to me, like coming, the place I'm from is very, it's a northern working class town, and
Hmm.
it's a beautiful place, and I love it. But like, it's hard to be different there. If you're into the things I was into and my friends were into, like, it was extremely fringe, and like
Yeah.
you would have to be careful how you dressed and where you
Yeah.
went, you know. So getting to Brighton was like, I was like a kid in a sweet shop because no one, it was just so liberal, and no one cared about it,
Hmm.
about anything. You know, it was very like non-judgmental. So yeah, going there, and then there was like this place. I don't know if it still exists. There was a club called the Vaults, and there, I think it was like I don't know, last Thursday of every month or something. There was a night called Wrong Music, which was people like DJ Scotch Egg and Shit Matt and um, just all this kind of weird stuff. And they would bring people from a lot of people from Europe would come and play, and it would just be a night of like whatever electronics. And
Hmm.
like that just opened my eyes to like a lot of stuff that I'd just never seen before. And yeah, it just felt like a bunch of freaks getting together and just doing stuff. And it felt to me just very liberating. And I think that's where like, then I discovered kind of like, wolf eyes and all that kind of genre of noise and stuff. And at that point in time, like Load Records and Lightning Bolt and
Yeah.
that was like a really big thing, and Arab on Radar, all those things were kind of like between me and my friends who I'd met at university. It was like a really big deal. So I think that fed a lot into what I was thinking about for my music as well.
I think it's when First and More championed Wolf Eyes Stabbed in the Face being the
Yeah,
best sub pop 12-inch
yeah,
since Mudhoney.
yeah,
And I was just like, similar to you, I was kind of like, anything called Stabbed in the Face, that's fucking hard, man.
yeah,
And then I went to see him at the ICA, and it was they were just in a weird mood and saying really odd shit to the crowd.
yeah.
And then at the end, he was like, "This is a song about getting stabbed in the worst possible place," and he was like, "Not the gut, not the leg, stabbed in the face," and then just punishing noise. And I was just like, "Whatever this is, I fucking need it."
Yeah,
And then I saw him at I'm just piecing this together, and then I saw him at First and More's created ATP,
oh yeah,
which was so extreme and
yeah.
so everything was bizarre. There was just like free jazz and kind of power electronics and
I think I was at that one. But that ATP like should be mentioned actually. That was a huge thing for me around that
yeah,
period of time. In
yeah,
just like seeing stuff that I'd never heard of. The first one I went to, I think it was like a Nightmare Before Christmas one, and it
yeah,
was Jake and Dinos Chapman were curating
yeah,
it. So that was like, the first time I'd seen like Sun, for example.
yeah,
And I remember turning to my friend about 20 minutes in, and I was like, are they still tuning up?
yeah,
And he was like, no, this is what it is. And I was and it was like a really transformative experience for me, like that. And the quote unquote like power of sound like became
yeah.
like a big deal for me.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at Mubi. Mubi is a curated streaming platform bringing you the best in cinema. Mubi also has its own podcast, and the new season is called Box Office Poison. Movies that bombed at the box office at the time, did awful financially, but have now become legendary movies, important movies. And if you listen to the pod, you know I'm always banging on about movies that were ahead of its time, or for whatever reason just didn't do well at the time they were released. Eyes Wide Shut, masterpiece. David Lynch's Lost Highway, masterpiece. Gonna say it, it's better than Mulholland Drive. What else? Sorcerer, which they mention on Movies Podcast. That film is a goddamn masterpiece. And yeah, I'm excited to listen to this and look at how or why these movies didn't do well over time. What is wrong with you people? Vertigo tanked when it first came out and got awful reviews. Now it's in the top 5 of the Sight and Sound greatest movies of all time. Okay, so finish this podcast, then go listen to the new season of the Movie Podcast. And as always, don't forget, you can try Mubi for 30 days for free. Just go to mubi.com/deeper into movies for 30 days of awesome movies for free. I should say the ATP TV is a bigger inspiration to me than like Criterion or something. Just that, just tuning in to the craziest films or Seinfeld marathons, and then you click over and there's like a really rare Herzog documentary, or not Grizzly Man, but the one where the guy gets bit by a bear. There's a film where a guy gets bit by a bear and then he tries to build a suit to go back and fight the bear.
I've not seen that one.
It's just like it's just kind of like some idiotic Napoleon Dynamite style documentary where he's very serious that he's wants to come. Project Grizzly is what it called.
I don't know that one.
He wants to come back and very kind of on the vibe of like American Movie or something, and he wants to come back and fight the bear. And then we kind of sing around and everyone's like, Flaming Lips are on in 10 minutes, and I'm like, fuck Wayne Coyne. I'm on Project Grizzly, right?
Yeah,
I can't
to
stop.
see. Yeah.
But yeah, that was very transformative. But you mentioned Sun. I had like I've got my ticket framed. Oh shit.
Oh cool.
Where it was Sun, White House in support, and Russell Haswell DJ at the Scala around the White 2 era.
That is a great lineup.
White House were just incredible and just so offensive, and I didn't know what I didn't know what these two guys were, or just hurling abuse and saying crazy shit. And then when I left, I bumped into Aphex Twin, and I had an Aphex Twin t-shirt on, and he did, and I was really kind of it was a strange crowd, and it was a weird energy in the event, and I was kind of, and then Aphex kind of walked toward me with his hand out and touched the logo like like it was some sort of, I can only describe it as like some sort of keypad recognition, like it's gonna like unlock if you push on the logo, right? And then I saw Chris Cunningham coming back in, and I was like, oh my god, Chris Cunningham, you're my favorite music video director, and I hear you're working on this EP of short films. And he's like, yeah, they should be out soon. And I was like, okay, cool, you're gonna watch Sun-O? Cool, me too. And Sun-O was Peter Reberg, R.I.P., was playing with Oren Embarchi, and 120 decibels or more. Car alarms were going off outside. The whole place was shaking. And I remember there was this thing where every time Reberg went to the desk and turned this knob, there was like a sonic boom blast that would hit you. And every time he went for the knob, the crowd would be like bracing them for it. And then these people started putting plastic cups on the floor, and the sonic blast would just fly them across the room. And we lost all track of like time, and Attila Chihar doing vocals. And we came out and we had lost all concept of like time and it was so physical,
It's the
and we all just
best.
felt really kind of discombobulated and kind of spaced out, and just kind of huddled around afterwards, like drinking
Yeah.
water. Like, wow, that was something. And I've never forgot that event. I think it's completely one of those when you hear people talking about, New York Dolls in 1977 or something. This was just so
Yeah.
fucking intense and
Yeah.
transformative.
I've had similar experiences watching them, and that yeah, it was like a big influence on me when I started playing live shows too. It was like, yeah, you know, you've got like, you've got this opportunity for an hour to like rewire someone
Yes.
and have the, I have them, you know, for you to transform a space for somebody else and have them leave that space, thinking about different things to when they went in, or what a gift to be able to do that and to experience that as an audience member as well.
Yeah. And I think even the Sun White 1, White 2 album peak for me
Yeah,
with that with that Julian, why am I blanking
Julian
on
Cope.
Julian Cope, that the
Yeah,
My Wall vocal
yeah,
on first
unbelievable.
track,
Yeah,
fucking crazy.
yeah,
And yeah,
yeah,
and through them I got into Prurient. They
yeah.
referenced you mentioned Load Records and that why am I blanking? Black Vase,
Black Bar's great record. Yeah,
masterpiece. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Our friend Josh
yeah,
does the best. I can't put this in, but our friend Josh does the best Dominic impression ever. It's so good.
yeah. He's Don's a old good friend of mine.
Yeah, he's so impressive. I can't
Yeah,
believe this. Um, when he started getting into like Berghain techno and stuff,
yeah,
that whole era was fucking sick, man.
yeah. Incredible. Yeah, we played a lot of shows together around that period of time. That was a really good period for forward thinking electronic music, or
Yeah,
very, very, very dark electronic music.
yeah. Take me through. You were in the Triangle scene,
Yep.
so to speak, and you probably hate the term witch house, but yeah, that type of era as well was.
I don't hate it. I just don't think that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
But I think I know what it is. And I like some of that music.
Was it even a scene, or is it? I know everyone kind of says it wasn't a scene. It's just a bunch of people kind of doing similar-ish things, or
I think it felt a bit. It did feel like a movement. Like, I mean, my first record came out on this label, Aurora Borealis, which was a very targeted thing because I just loved what they did, and they did stuff with, Ganinga Gap, which is like a Stephen O'Malley side project thing, and they had all this kind of weird sort of doom folk stuff that I was really into, and I moved to London like just before that record came out, and then through living there, I became really good friends with Ben Power, who Blank Mass is one half of Fuck Buttons too.
mm-hmm.
And we were having a pint in the pub one day, and he was just like, "Oh, my housemate Robin texted me and said that he wants to come meet you. He runs this label called Triangle." I didn't know what Triangle was, but he brought me like a bunch of records. And it kind of just so happened that like the music I was starting to make for the second record was more like, if the first record was like me sort of wanting to make a statement on like, this sounds very lofty, but like sort of 20th century like composition, but through the lens of like one person doing a sort of orchestral thing. Second one was like, I was going to like Plastic People a lot, and there was all this, and that was like, and Forward and like DMZ and like that whole kind of scene was like really just bubbling up in London at that time. And me having an obsession with like low end and that
Yeah.
just like it just really like hit me, and I was like, oh, but and I could see similarities between like what that was doing and what like Sun were doing. And I was like, man, what if someone fused like that kind of metal with that kind of dance music? Like, that'd be really
A kind of
interesting.
dubstep.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. So like I was already thinking about like, oh, I would like to make something that's kind of a fuse of those two things, or like my take on what that would be.
Yeah.
So meeting Robin at that point, it just kind of made sense when he was like, "Oh, I've got this label and this kind of things we do, and I'd like to do whatever you're going to do next." And it just kind of worked out, and then it was a really exciting time. Like, Holy Other, and like, there was a long period of time where like Holy Other, Evian Christ, Vessel, me, Wife, they're not on the label same level, but Den Dykes there, Andy Stott. We were like hanging out all the time. Like
Right.
it was like the best crew, and we would go play festivals in Europe together, and like it did feel like a scene for sure.
Yeah.
It was. I look back on that with like really fond memories. It's great.
But looking back, that's a bunch of real weirdo musicians as well doing really,
Yeah.
you know, challenging stuff. It's kind of amazing almost that was such a thing.
It's honestly, yeah, but like
Kind of, on compared to say Pitchfork kind of zeitgeist now to
no, look,
really crazy stuff.
I agree, and like I think about it, and at that point, like what would I have been like 23, 24 ish,
Yeah.
and like you don't really question anything when you're that age. It's like, oh, I'm gonna go. Yeah, I'm flying to like Poland tomorrow to do a gig, and then
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to Latvia or what, and you would just find these people, and a lot of it was like, these crazy art institutions, and you play these old incredible buildings, and like
Yeah.
there'd be a lot of people. I was like, to your point, like looking back on it now, I'm like, man, this was really quite challenging, weird music to get
Yeah.
to get that sort of audience.
Yeah.
And especially like, a lot of, people went off to, Holy Other did a lot of production stuff, like Evian obviously did Kanye and a bunch of other things. And, I've ended up doing movies, and like, it's pretty mad to think that like that's the thing that led to this.
Yeah. Also, there was I don't know what brought it on. I was walking my dog and feeling really melancholic, and looking back at when I was in my 20s and going to ATP, and I go to London Film. This is basically before the internet ruined everything, and when I was going to I go to London Film Festival, and I'd walk past Sophia Coppola, and I'm like, hey, can I sign my poster and like have a cool moment? I see Richard Linklater, I see Jake Gyllenhaal, John Waters, Todd Solondz would be there, and I'm like, okay, that's done. That's in October. Nightmare Before Christmas is December.
Yeah,
and then I don't know. Then the following week it'll be like, oh, I'm going to the Godspeed You Black Emperor show and whatever.
Yeah.
and then I'm going to go see Lost in Translation or whatever. And the culture was just so sick, man. There was so much amazing stuff happening everywhere. And or then I'd be like, okay, I'm going to go to because it kind of a great crowd of friends. Now I'm like, you're going to go to the Bryson Ellis signing tomorrow, and like, yeah, and then you see people from ATP were there as well, and there'd be guys
100%.
in like Mugwai t-shirts or whatever, and then it was just everything was just so exciting and great, and we kind of just assumed that. I guess I'm getting at there was that period of like to the early 2000s when there was still money in the industry to have Mysterious Skin or Kids or Gummo open in a Cineworld. And
totally.
and places like that, and that kind, or that middle class indie movie would be a thing. And there's Steve Buscemi and Chloe Sevigny movies in the cinema. But I kind of guess I thought it would always be like that.
Me too. And you in those days you had to sort of, people were okay with having to front something financially to see if it was going to work or if people liked it.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's just different. It doesn't cost anything. It doesn't cost anything to put something on Instagram or TikTok and see if there is, a demographic of people that are ready to spend money on it. And I think that, for some people and some things that really works. And I'm like, there are exciting things happening culturally.
For sure,
I do also think that it sort of puts us in this zone where I think that there are people who would be afraid of making true artistic statements for the fear that it was there's this immediate feedback that could be negative. Whereas before you just kind of have to make something, put it out there and wait to see, you know.
Yeah. Well, speaking to movies, I mean, in the era we grew up in, you'd have 5 shots of roulette wheel to see if
Yeah.
you'd make money back on it. You'd have cinema,
Yeah. Yeah.
rental,
Yeah.
retail like HMV/Amazon release, cable,
Yeah.
and then TV. And you got 5 strikes trying to making the money back. So it wasn't that deep. It was like,
Yeah.
worst case, let's dump it on cable and it might become one of those weird cable hits. Like Big Lebowski totally found its life on cable, and kind of films like that were just really blowing up and doing the numbers. But
yeah,
it's kind
but
of
I
weird.
feel, I don't know if you feel this, but I do feel that sort of 90s auteur movement edging its way back.
Yeah, I think so. I can kind of feel that there's like the Ari Asters of Robert
Yeah.
Eggers or Safdies and stuff. That people like
Yeah.
that, all the kind of goats of the A24 and the kind of small stuff that they do feels like there are these Yorgos.
Definitely.
Luca Guardino takes big fucking swings at everything he does, which I really rate. Same with Yorgos, but Luca's just like dropping crazy movies every big movies with fuck off budgets every year. He's tackling something like a Suspiria or American Psycho. I'm like, God bless this guy. He's doing crazy shit. It's really brave.
And like, on all bias aside, I think, the fact that a film like Beau is Afraid exists, like the film or don't like the film, I think is a miracle.
Yeah.
What, like, that might be the most idiosyncratic film of the last 10 or 15 years in my opinion.
Yeah, I always rate anyone who, when they get that blank check moment in their career, like Paul Thomas Anderson with Magnolia and stuff, where I think there's a great story that he was gonna make something small, and then he bumped into Francis Ford Coppola in like Dan Tanner's or something, and he was like, dude, go off with this one. He said you haven't got a stain against your name in Hollywood yet, so just, if you ever want to do something big, now is the chance, because you're never going to get the shot again.
He was correct.
Yeah, and he went really off. With just but no, I love those moments. I think that's I think Beau's Afraid will have a complete reassessment. And
I think so too. Yeah, give it 10 years, and I think people are going to look at that film really differently.
Or even to the fact that I've got the theory that almost Ari, I think, almost knows that it's painfully long in places. I almost feel, my theory is he's messing with the expectation of a viewer.
I think I don't even think it's that, to be honest. I think, like, you mentioned Chris Cunningham. He, since I moved to LA, has become a great friend of mine, and like all we do is talk about movies just non-stop. And we both went to a test screening of Beau's Afraid, and his take on it, I think, was perfect. Because I was asking him what he thought of it, and he was like, well, yeah, sure, there's like sequences that maybe didn't quite work, or things that could be shorter, or parts where it could be tighter, but like, that's not the point of this film. The point of this film is that it's so idiosyncratic and it's so personal that to have any critique on, like, oh, you should chop this, it's irrelevant. It makes no sense. And I think that's totally true.
Okay, I'm going to rewatch it through that lens.
You know what I mean? When something is so personal and so raw, like, the point is that you are seeing it through. It's not made for, you know what I mean? It's not purely made for enjoyment. It's not entertainment.
Yes,
It's
yeah,
something else.
yeah. I had the theory from when he meets Parker Posey
Yeah.
and that big climax. I thought that's the ending, and then
Literally and
yeah,
figuratively.
yeah, and then I thought after that, I had this theory that he's deliberately pushing the audience further and further. But I want to go back because there was so much. Same with Megalopolis.
Yeah,
I
I haven't sat through that yet.
oh no, you should,
I want to.
definitely.
Yeah, no,
Oh
I'm
yeah,
definitely going to see it.
I was talking to Eli Kessler in London after he did his
Yeah,
show, and of all our friends were saying that they can't stand it, but I was like, dude, I can't stop thinking about it. And he was like, me too. There are
right.
parts of that film that I keep on thinking about, and the same with Bo. I keep on thinking about the the woods and the place, the play chapter.
Yeah.
That's
That's my
really
favorite
haunted
part of the
me.
film.
That's something in that I has really hit me heavy in the soul, and I keep on coming back to it, having fragmented memories of it, which is always a sign of a film that's
Same. That's why I mean I was really adamant to put that whole. It's only on the. I can't remember if it's only on the digital or only on the vinyl, but that whole sequence was like this big. I think the sequence is like 15 minutes or something, and it's one big sort of evolving drone with the with
yeah,
the voiceover. And I was really adamant to put that on the soundtrack because I had a really similar experience to you with it, and it's funny that's one of those bits of the film that's really divisive. Like there are people who just couldn't connect to it and really don't like it, and I I couldn't imagine the film without it. I thought it was the most
yeah.
magical, captivating. It's one of the most original things I've seen in a film in a really long time.
What does Chris enjoy? I knew him briefly in London when I was a runner in the edit house where he used to edit,
Oh,
and
cool.
I would awkwardly linger and be like, I think we were both beards. We kind of looked like we could be friends. So he was always very kind of kind and understanding to me, and knew
He's
I was a
lovely.
stan. I knew I was a stan. But I'd be like, "Hey, do you need any coffee?" And then like just to see what he was editing. And I don't know if
Yeah.
he was editing Spectral Musicians.
Oh yeah,
has he ever
the
showed you that one, the Square Pusher one?
yeah, I've seen some of that. Yeah.
Yeah, he was editing that, and all I could see is just like some crazy alien autopsy happening. And so I'd come in more often than you. I think you're meant to like check on everyone in every hour or so. Do you want tea,
Yeah.
biscuits, snacks? But Chris would be every 45 minutes on the on the dot, and it was always so
Yeah.
exciting. And he'd edit in the attic, which I thought was so cool because no one wanted that space because it was so secluded, and obviously that was Chris's vibe. So
Yeah, man, he's just like he's the real deal.
he loved Nutty Professor. He spoke to me about Nutty Professor, American Werewolf in London.
Yeah. Alien and Kubrick and I mean the amount that we talk about Alien is I could just sit for days and talk about it. Like and yeah, like often like we both do this thing where we put YouTube on, it's just like the sounds of the Nostromo and stuff. And, um
Really?
yeah,
What
yeah.
what is it that keeps on haunting you about that movie? Is it just the atmosphere?
Yeah, the score is outrageous. I think the cinematography is unbelievable. There's just an atmosphere to that film where, like, I love sci-fi,
Yeah,
but a very specific kind of sci-fi, and I think that for me just nailed everything that I really like about
yeah,
space films, and the fact that also it's not, for all intents and purposes, it's really like the first slasher film, you know,
yeah.
um, in a way.
Did you like Romulus?
I loved it.
Me too.
I really did. I've worked with the director a few years ago on a TV series, and I really enjoyed working with him. And when he told me he was doing it, I was really intrigued for what it was going to be.
Mm.
And but uh, I'm not the biggest Prometheus fan.
No.
I like it conceptually. I just don't think
Yeah.
it was articulated the best. Same with Covenant. I didn't actually make it to the end of Covenant, so
Those ones
kind of
don't
been.
count to me, honestly. I
So
think
yeah, not really. Like, and I mean, I'm in this chat group where like we're split straight down the middle, where like other people are just like Prometheus is one of the best films ever made. And I'm just like, how are we
absolutely not.
friends?
Yeah.
Um, but again, I like it conceptually. I like what it's saying. I just think that I just don't think it's a very well made film. I think the character development, whatever. But Romulus, so I wanted it to be really good. I feel like I've been conditioned into just expecting to not like another Alien movie forever. And within the first 10 minutes, I was just like, man, nailed.
Yeah,
Like,
they get it.
so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really uncomplicated. Like,
Yeah, I love that. But it's just 10 minutes. Go. We're trying to do
yeah,
this,
yeah,
and that's it. No, like, oh, we're trying to get the Romulus gene. It's like, what the fuck is that? Like, I don't
yeah.
get the sci-fi talk of it.
Yeah.
Okay, hear me out. Did you ever go to Alien War in London?
I didn't.
So there was this crazy role play thing in Trocadero where everyone would be in character. About 10 people could go in this like real dark industrial looking space pod.
Yeah.
And they're like with a military team, and I'm like, all right, everyone sit down. We're going to take off soon. And they're all method, and it's all really dark and really low lit. And then it's like, hang on, something's wrong. And the lights go down and they must have this really fucking legit hologram of the alien. Wow. They start strobing and then the alien is down and you see him briefly and then you hear someone scream when someone's gone. They're like, all right, go. Bobby, I'm shitting myself. I'm fucking 16. And they're like, go. And we're like, is this part of the thing? Or is this meant to be happening? And then you go through a corridor and there's another scene where you're in this really long corridor, very much like that they're all over us, man, kind of moment.
Yeah.
And then there's another alien and then you run and then you go into the lift. And what you don't notice because you're freaking out and having a panic attack is someone else joins the team.
Yeah.
Another Patreon joins.
Sure.
So there's another audience member there. And then the lift opens and you see the alien claws lift the lift open. They grab him, pull him away. He's screaming, like begging for his life. And then they say, go this way. And then you shoot out the exit and you're spat out back into Trocadero.
I would not do well with that.
It was terrifying.
Yeah.
It was so scary. But I had the alien. I'll send you a picture after this. It was this alien box set, but it was like a briefcase with the face hugger on the front.
Oh, wow.
And it was Alien 1, 2, and 3, stills, an Alien 3 t-shirt, and an Alien War card that you could go as many times as you want during the year.
So how many times did you go?
Oh, like 5. But it was really scary, so I didn't want to go too often. It was it was just really, looking back on it, that was a whole really weird thing that probably only could have happened in the 90s or something. But yeah, Trocadero, Piccadilly Circus.
That's cool. I mean, I didn't spend that much time in London, really. Like, I lived there from like 2010 to like 2015 before I came here. But yeah, so all that kind of cool stuff I probably missed.
Going back to Bo for a second, how did you even approach a soundtrack to a movie like that? Midsommar, I can kind of feel you got way more references and stuff, but for something as strange and as unique as this, how do you even begin? Where does your brain go to putting music to it?
It was hard. It was really hard. Like, the way that Ari and I discovered worked best when we were doing Midsummer was that he would come to LA for chunks of time, and then we'd just spend days in my studio working together. So it was the same thing with this, but you know, I think he would be okay with me saying this too. I think like it was difficult for him to know what the musical identity or the through line of the film was. I mean, we have a giant Spotify playlist with a bunch of stuff that we were sending each other and we were listening to and things that we felt were in the world of the film. Um, but really just sitting together and like we sort of established a thing where, when he first came over and we were doing Midsummer, I was kind of like, look, I just want to like tell you that it's very raw for me to have someone here and just watch this from scratch like happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he was like, look, it's fine. Like let's, I've never done this before either. Let's just like not be afraid of making mistakes or just doing stuff that's not working or whatever it is. Let's just approach this with the idea that we're just gonna have fun and just see what happens in the room. And that ended up being how the majority of the score for Midsummer was written. And it was really, really fun. So we just adopted the same thing for this one where, we would watch sort of key scenes, we would sort of just look at it. I would sit at the piano or I would pick up a guitar or I would dial up a string patch or something and we would loop stuff and I would just sit and play. And the great thing about having someone else in the room is like, it's more often than not, I don't have to look at him to know if something's working because you just feel it change. So it was just a lot of experimentation. And then, the film's so sort of, it pivots and moves so much kind of plot wise and from place to place that really you're looking for music to keep you kind of rooted in the story and keep you with the character. So kind of just came up with this really simple kind of vocal motif that I had my friend sing. And that became kind of the through line of the film because we wanted it to feel like the whole thing is he is predetermined that he's going to end up at this house. So we wanted it to almost feel like this kind of siren call that was bringing him from the start all the way to the end of the film. So it might be an interesting one for people who are interested to watch again with that in mind, because there's seeds of this vocal thing that are just all over the film that you don't even notice sometimes. It's like kind of subliminal. And, a lot of times he and I would sit and we're both massive David Lynch fans in the way that he uses kind of score as sound design and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of stuff embedded in both films that we've done together that might not register until a few watches as well.
And how did he discover you? What was his favorite thing that you did?
We met, it would have been probably 2017. I just got an email from my agent and was like, I've got this guy, Ari Aster, who says that he's written a script while listening to your records and he'd love to meet you. And Ari he hadn't finished Hereditary at this point.
Right.
So no one really knew who he was.
Yeah.
He still had his website up where you could watch his short films.
Yeah.
So I watched some, and I mean it was awesome. It felt to me like I was watching like a new Todd Solondz.
Yes.
Like, who was one of my favorite filmmakers. And so I was like, definitely would love to meet him. So he came over to my house at the time and we just had coffee and nerded about movies. We didn't even talk that much about Midsommar. He was telling me about Hereditary. And we just geeked out about music and films, and we liked the same stuff, and we both got a very dark sense of humor. And so, the end of those things, you're always supposed to do the thing like, well, whatever, like my people will call your people, and but we both just kind of ended it by being like, let's 100% do this thing because I really want to work with you. And that's kind of how it started. And he, even like version 1 of the script for Midsummer, I remember it had it written in in certain pages, like put this Habs and Cloak song on now and
Yeah.
finish reading
All
these
right.
couple of pages. Like, so he knew the kind of tonality of some of it. Yeah, so that's how we met.
Cool. That's so good.
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, it's been amazing to see the whole journey from that to where he is now and to watch him as a filmmaker just do his thing. And he was, especially on Midsummer, was really inclusive, and I got every revision of the script, and you know, sort of principal photography and location scouting they were doing and all this stuff. And I was very involved, or he allowed me to be very involved in just seeing that whole process come together. And yeah, it's been awesome to see him kind of grow and really, really be, I think, one of the most exciting filmmakers of the last 20 years.
Yeah. Fire Temple. Greatest thing you've ever done. That's incredible. That
Oh, thank
piece.
you.
That's so great.
Thanks.
I've got this weird thing that in my head, it starts off almost like, kind of like Gareki or Godspeed You Black Emperor, but then when the
Right.
horns come in,
Yeah.
it always reminds me of John Barry Walkabout, which is my favorite, one of my favorite
Oh,
scores of all time.
that's cool. I hadn't thought about Walkabout, but I mean, I do love that film. Love that score. That was one of those things where we just had it. We had that sequence up, and I would just sit at the keyboard and just start playing progressions, and he was just kind of sat next to me, being like, "Oh, that's good. Now let's think about what we're going to move here, and then we're going to do this." And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm really proud. I'm really, really proud of it, and it was one of those things where it also worked because we weren't taking it that seriously.
Right. I'm just thinking from a composer standpoint, when you've got something so money on screen, how do you, it probably could be quite easy to something to sound good against it in a way.
Kind of, but also it's like there's an immense pressure because you're like,
Yes.
man, I cannot fuck this up because that whole film is such a gift.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's the first film I'd scored by myself too.
Yeah.
So like, I was just constantly like, man, I feel really simpatico with this guy,
Yeah.
and I love this film, but like, holy shit, I cannot mess this up because what an opportunity. So yeah, that was like, again, like I think if he hadn't have been there, it would have been quite different. But for example, just like there's a scene, I haven't seen it in a long time, but like I remember there's a scene where like Christian's in the bear suit, and there's a point where like we cut to this aerial shot of him as he kind of like goes up in flames.
Yeah.
And I just for fun like dialed up this choir patch, and I was like, man, what if when we see the flames we get this like oh, and like and we did it, and we were like, that's so ridiculous. We were pissing our pants laughing at it. We were like, we can't not do that because it's so ridiculous. You know what I mean? And like, so I think part of it was like speaking to the spectacle of what was happening, but also speaking to how kind of farcical and ridiculous the whole thing is.
Right.
In this way where it just becomes this kind of alchemy of stuff where like it is sort of an austere piece, but it is also just really kind of fantastical and ridiculous at the same time. And I think like that's where he and I meet a lot, where we can find the humor and stuff.
And what do you do when it's not working?
Yeah.
They're not appreciating what you're doing.
Well,
and stuff, or you're not communicating. I always find communicating through sound is such a bizarre, abstract concept.
It is. I think when I was a bit younger and I first started doing this, and the same with producing or writing for artists and stuff too, like if I would do something and someone didn't like it or wasn't working for them, I'm a very sensitive person. So for me, that would be like it'd be like someone sticking a knife in my heart. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I poured myself into this thing and I'm giving it to you as a gift and you don't like it. But I think one of the important things I've learned through just doing so much scoring is that it really, my ego has to be like outside somewhere, you know.
Yeah.
It's not really about, you know, look, I want to make things that I enjoy and things that I like, but first and foremost, like I'm here to serve the story and to serve you as a director and to help you with your vision. So I think like what I've kind of learned to do is to not, you know, there are often times when I'll watch something and I'll have all these kind of things that I've never got to articulate yet, like musically. I'm like, oh, I
Yeah.
could do this thing that I was wanting to do, or this thing. And I just sit with the director, and more often than not, it works more for me when someone talks in terms of emotion rather than in terms of music.
Yeah.
So I think like particularly with Ari and I, like sometimes because he's such a music nerd, he loves music so much, we can sometimes get a bit tangled in the weeds of talking about melodies or talking about instruments or
Yeah.
chord progressions. Whereas like I think what's helpful in those situations where it's not coming or it's not working is to just zoom out and be like, look, let's just talk about what you want to feel. Let's talk about what's happening and how
Mm-hmm.
we want an audience to feel, how you feel as someone who's made it, you know?
Yeah.
And more
That's
more
right.
often than not, that tends to unlock something. Yeah.
So I want to wrap up, but I'm really curious because I knew you as Hacks and Cloak, and then when I started seeing your credits on like Father John Misty and
Right.
stuff, I was
Yeah.
like, the noise guy? Like, what the fuck? How have we gone from like excavation to
Yeah.
like this guy's got a noose on the cover of his fucking record? How is he going to like really OG kind of LA singer songwriter people?
Yeah.
How
Uh,
did you even get in the door to those type of, not to say obviously you make power electronics so you only listen to White House,
no,
but I'm just saying how did you?
I get it. You know, LA is one of those places where I know. Have you ever been here?
Yeah.
Can I ask what your relationship to it is or how you feel about it?
Okay, let me just alienate everyone. I think LA is. I had a way better time in LA than I did in New York.
Same.
New York kind of felt like London on steroids,
That is exactly the term I've used
right?
for it
And
as well.
I didn't like to get full Larry David about it. I don't like the restaurant situation. The door, the outside fucking doors that are attached to all the. There's like a door. It's like a door
Yeah,
with a plastic
yeah, don't get
framing,
me. Yeah,
almost like a
no,
canopy type of thing. That's
yeah,
always on a really detail. It's always on a really fucking savagely strong spring that I'm just like, ah!
yeah.
And then when I was even in the famous deli and stuff, there was like a bag check.
Oh, cats. Is it cats?
Cat's Deli. There was like a bag
Yeah,
check where I had to put all my
yeah,
bags in a. It's really odd. But then LA, I was there for my 40th. I'd saved up a bunch of money and I was just getting an Uber to get some tacos, and then I'd Uber meet my friends for drinks. Then
yeah,
I'd go and I have this all time favorite memory that I was with my girlfriend and we had some delicious Asian food. It was about 10 p.m. and I was like, I really want to go Amoeba Records night right now. I really want to go Amoeba Records right now. She's
yeah,
like, well, it's open to like fucking whatever. Let's just go. And
yeah,
I just went there on a full tummy and bought like all these deleted Criterions that were discontinued. And I bought this weird fucking Charles Manson CD and these
yeah,
Lounge Lizard CDs.
yeah,
And I just had such a delightful time. And then we were staying in Echo Park, and then we'd get up the
yeah.
next morning and grab breakfast burritos and stuff and just cruise through the day. And I was
The
like,
best.
fuck New York. And
Yeah,
I was like,
no, it's the best.
yeah. And Sonora Town,
But the best. Yeah, I mean, it's called Sonora Town because they actually go to Sonora and get the flour from there to make their tortillas with. Like,
I didn't know
it's
that.
so yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, my relationship with LA is very similar. Like, and it's even less expected for me because okay, so like I know we're gonna wrap up, but I want to tell you the story.
Sure,
So
please.
when I was a kid, you know, I mean, among the films that were really formative for me. Kids was one of
Yes.
them. And I went through a period of time of collecting records and being a DJ and playing a lot of rap music and scratch and all that kind of shit. And so when I was a kid, man, for the age of like 16 onwards, like I was obsessed with New York and I could not wait to go there. I didn't grow up with, we weren't woefully poor, but we certainly didn't have a lot of spare money. So we going to America on holiday was just never an option for us.
Hmm. Yeah, same.
So, so the first time I ever got to go to America was 2013, and I got my manager at the time got an email from Atticus Ross, who was like, "Hey, it was very short. I think it was just something like I really like Bobby's music. What is he up to? Can he come out to LA and meet me?" And that was kind of it. And I remember being like, "Oh, do you think he's gonna like pay for me to go there? Because I don't really have any
Mm.
money."
Yeah.
And my manager was like, "No, but we'll figure it out." And serendipitously, I got asked to go to New York to produce a record for this metal band called The Body. And so kind of used that to do a whole trip and piggyback off that.
Hmm.
So I went to New York, and I remember getting to New York. I was I can't even tell you how excited I was. Like I didn't sleep on the like no, I just could not wait to get off that plane and be in New York. And the morning I woke up, I was walking to the studio, which was in Greenpoint. I stop and get a coffee. I call my parents, and I'm just like, "You're not gonna fucking believe this." Like, it's like being in a film. Like, there's the steam coming out the thing over there.
Yeah.
There's the hot dog guy over there. There's the yellow cab over there. Like, this is outrageous. I can't believe it. And all my friends in New York, when I told them I was spending like a week there and then 2 weeks in LA. And when I told them I was going over to LA, nothing, New York is like nothing more than to talk shit on the West Coast.
Yeah.
Um, and I hadn't spent a lot of time really thinking about LA. Like, it wasn't a place I'd ever dreamed of going. I didn't think about it geographically or culturally. So when I got to LA, I wasn't that pumped about it, like on the flight or whatever. And then I got here and I got in the Uber and I'm looking outside and I'm like, there's palm trees everywhere. It's really sunny. It's really beautiful. It's really open. And I was staying with my publicist in Beechwood, which is a really nice area. And it's like, you go up the street and the Hollywood sign is like at the top. And I started putting pieces together and I was like, wait, this place is like where all the weird shit happened. Like this is where
Yeah.
all the Manson stuff was
Of
here and all
course.
the cult and like so day one, like I wake up and like my friend Judy I was staying with, she was like, "What do you want to do today?" I was like, "Can you take me to Cielo Drive?" And
Yeah.
she was like, "Yeah, sure." So like we drove all out there and I just started piecing all this stuff together. And then like I had this moment like when the sun was setting and like all the palm trees were turning pink and like you see the mountains and I was like, wait a minute, like this is actually more of the America that I grew up with as a kid. Like this is like Spielberg America.
Yeah.
Like this is like that magic sort of like kids on bikes in the street like America. Like
Yeah.
which was really romantic to me. And it still is. I still love living here for those
Yeah.
reasons. Like it's such a visually great place. And so one of the things also was like I met people who I've really admired a lot here, Josh being one of them. And it became this thing of like people in London or in England like nothing more than to tell you to not have big ideas, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'd go back and people would be like, what, you're gonna move to Hollywood? You're gonna start scoring films? Like, what?
Yeah.
And people in LA were like, yeah, man, do it. Like, oh, you should meet my friend who does this thing. You should go in the studio with this guy. And so all these dots started connecting to me. So I just made a point of coming back to LA as much as I could. And I was working with Atticus on some film stuff. And it just seemed like a really just effervescent, like fruitful place. And so when I moved here, like it became like no one, it's a bit more cool now, but like when I moved here, like no one was really cool. Um,
Right.
and I mean that in a good way because there's this sort of thing, like, and especially the age I was in London, like you sort of want to be listening to the hippest thing or the newest thing, the coolest thing. And like actually when I moved here, I did a lot of like digging back into stuff that I listened to as a kid and a lot of like, like Elliott Smith and singer-songwriter stuff and that kind of thing. And I discovered Father John Misty pretty early into moving to LA. And I was just like, man, it really, the storytelling of it really resonated with me. And I was dying to find someone that knew him or a way to work with him. And it just never presented itself. And then one year, this would have been what, 2016 maybe. My good friends of mine are in the band The XX.
Mhm.
And so they invited us to Coachella to come see them play. And I'm backstage and I see my friend who works for Bella Union, who I haven't seen in a really long time. And he's there because Father John Misty is playing. So Josh walks up and he introduces us and he's like, oh, this is my friend Bobby. He does this thing, Hacks and Cloak. And Josh is like, oh, I really like that.
No.
And I was like, I'm sure you're just being polite, but I actually really
Yeah.
do like your music a lot. So it's nice to meet you. And he was like, no, I've heard your records. Like I'm a fan. And I was like, cool. Well, um, you live in LA, right? And he was like, yeah, do you? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, well, we should hang out. I was like, sure. So we ended up literally the next week, like going for dinner. Um, and we hit it off and it was really fun. And we had a lot of similar interests and takes on stuff. And as we're driving home, he was dropping me off. I was like, oh, what are you doing? I think it's like Wednesday. And I was like, oh, what are you doing on Friday? And he was like, oh, I've got a writing session with Ellie Goulding. And I was like, oh, that's funny because like we had spoke on Twitter like a lot. And I think after the Bjork record came out, she like messaged me saying she would want to work together. And we'd had these series of misses of trying to get in the studio together and it never happened. And I told Josh this and he was like, oh, well, you should just come. And I was like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
It's your thing. Like, I don't want to intrude. And he was like, no, I'd be happy to have you there. Like, it'd be really fun. And I sort of went home and I talked to my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife. And I was like, I've just had the weirdest evening. Like, I've been out to dinner with this guy that I really admire, and now he's inviting me to the studio with like one of the biggest pop stars in the universe. I can't go and do that. And she's like, Bobby, do you not realize how many people would chop off their arms to go and be in that room? Like,
Yeah.
she like literally was like marching me out the door, being like, "You're going." And so I went, and it was awesome, and it was a really fun time. We ended up writing a song together, and that was kind of the spark of Josh and mine's musical friendship. He would come to my apartment I lived in, and we would just. It started off, we would just make songs that just made each other laugh. Like we would just sit and sort of make like joke, like parody things together, or just piss about. And after about 9 months of just doing that every week, he was like, "Do you actually like we should do something properly?"
Yeah.
And that's kind of how that whole thing happened. And we spent, a year working on a record together, some of which is coming out in bits and bats, and we're working on some stuff at the moment. Yeah, I don't know. It's just that to me is just testament of being in LA and just meeting people and you know people sort of don't have the same expectations or put you in the same boxes in a way that I find really refreshing.
Yeah, I feel it's a kind of very LA thing to have a writing session. And
Yeah,
not in that kind of corny super producer kind of, let's get all the best fucking writers in town and piece
yeah, and I
together a
know,
song with 90 fucking credits or something. But
yeah,
it just
and I,
seems
and
more
I,
kind of Laurel Canyon kind of, you know, James
yeah,
Taylor kind of coded than it as a kind of
yeah, and that's the latter is the way that I like. I like to work. I tried the other thing for a while, and it's just not really my personality type. you know. I can see why it works for some people, but you know, these days, like if I get booked to kind of do a session with someone I don't know, I kind of make it clear to management or whoever, like, well, we're going to need a couple of days because, like, the first day I'm probably just going to sit and play each other music and get to know each other because sitting in a
Yeah.
room and making music, you know, just being expected to bang something out with someone who you know nothing about is crazy to, you know.
Yeah. I love the guy, but I've no idea how Mark Ronson does it, where he just seems to gel so quickly with people and then
Well,
just.
he has an immense talent of just being the nicest person on earth
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah. It's just so wildly impressive how many
Yeah,
bangers that guy fucking has. It's
yeah, and he genuinely is just a really, really affable, lovely, talented man.
yeah. This has been so much fun. We could talk for hours.
Yeah, no, super fun.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you. Really enjoyed it.
Boom. That was me and Bobby. Man, I need to go watch Beau's Afraid again. I'm serious. And go listen to Fire Temple. That song is just so beautiful. And Bobby needs to go watch Bully again. I'm telling you, Bully bangs. Okay, that is it from me. Thank you for listening. Thank you to Joshua Eustace, aka Telephone Tel Aviv, for my beautiful music. And you guys for listening. As always, if you like the pod, please like and subscribe. It really helps with listenership, and the bigger the pod gets, the bigger the guests get. And the podcast will always be free. Thank you. Speak soon.